Welcome to the Sports Outlet. Today I'm joined by Skylar Darel and Matt Ajaj here, and a little different show for you guys today. We're not going to be recapping the week in sports. We're going to talk about sports more in general and our analysts' ideas and thoughts about it. So first I want to talk about how each of you guys got into sports, why we love sports, what made us as young kids be so interested in all these different types of games and activities. So Skylar, what made you a sports fan?
Well, I remember early in my childhood, about 3rd or 4th grade, my dad took me to the Yankee game, and it was against the Boston Red Sox, and it was very exciting because we hate the Red Sox because I'm born and raised in New York City, Manhattan. So we went to the game, and the Yankees won 5-0, and I really enjoyed the whole winning in sports thing. I thought it was kind of nice. So from then on, I became infatuated with it. Every sport, I'm always watching or talking about it. Why I love sports, there are 2 reasons other than the fact that it's entertaining. I like watching it because it keeps me occupied and I enjoy it. Number one, it sort of transcends life. It acts as a distraction from everything that's going on in the world, whether it's good or bad. It just gives you a place to relax your attention for a certain period of time. And also the fans. I love the fans. I love being a part of the fans, but also watching them. Just one of the things that give me chills when I watch sports is when something happens, the crowd just goes insane. It's one of those things that you can't really top. And I remember the biggest moment for me was in 2001 when George Bush threw the first pitch of the World Series Game 3 against the Diamondbacks after 9/11. It was a moment that did transcend life and sports and just sort of unified everybody. Yeah. And I really enjoyed that. And then obviously Derek Jeter's home run that night, Mr. November. So
that's right.
Those 2 reasons definitely resonate with me why I love sports.
Yeah, great. Matt, what got you into sports? Same thing?
Well, ever since I was born, I remember just like I would see all those baby photos with me, like my dad propping me up with those like little fake plastic golf clubs, plastic baseball bats. Like ever since, like that just like got me into sports. And my mom, I always was able to relate to my mom a bit better with general life things. That's how I go to advice to. But my dad, all we used to talk about since I was like 5 years old and all the way up till now is sports. And that's what gave me my connection with my dad. And I find that great because we played baseball. He coached me for 10 years, all throughout All-Stars, which is great. Just me and my dad, 10 years, age 5 through 15. And now all we do is talk about, like FanDuel, what's your lineup for this week or whatever. Like that's what I call my dad about. Otherwise, I'd just be calling my mom every time. That's what we have to talk about. It gives you something to talk about with people. And I feel like I'm kind of a bit of a social anxiety. I have trouble communicating with people, but sports always gives you something to talk about. You can relate to anybody, even if someone doesn't care about sports. You can always just bring it up. What do you like about it? Who's your favorite player? Stuff like that. It's always in the news because it never stops. And that's what I love about sports. And like some of the moments really, like you said, transcend life. Like great moment back in George Bush's first pitch in the World Series. But I think another great moment, just like not so much transcendental of life, but just for me in general as a Giants fan, was the Super Bowl in 2012, Super Bowl 46. Just seeing Eli Manning, Mario Manningham take a terrible, I wouldn't say a terrible team, but just like a gutsy, gritty team who wasn't nowhere near the best, but was able to topple Tom Brady, big name Patriots. Just it's always those little underdog stories that like bring like a passion to you. I don't know, and like that winning thing, like sports, it does make you want to win at things in life. It makes you want to have a passion to succeed. Sometimes it gets to be a little bit much. We take it a little bit too seriously sometimes, but I think it's very important to our lives in general to get sports in our lives.
Yeah, I agree. And what I think about sports is that you get your maximum mentally and physically. A lot of activities, not just professionals, but everybody who performs them, you only get one of the 2. But you get your full athletic potential, your full mental potential too. Because just, again, and everybody knows it's just as much a mental stressor, a mental activity as it is a physical one. Right. You see, while you may think, they're only athletes, they only use their body for all these things, it's the skill levels don't vary as much as the mental attitudes do. The really great ones have the mentality that it takes to win and to be successful. And it's not just who runs fastest, who jumps highest, it's who wants it more. And that's something that sports taught me. It's and it helped me apply it to everyday life. It's like I have to be the best I can be, giving everything I want because I want to win. It's not like in a classroom, for example, you're competing with everybody else, and it's the same thing. Other than that, it's like a release from everyday life. You get to have fun, exercise. It's great, and be part of a team. Now, keep in mind, sports aren't always team sports, but each one has their merits. For example, an individual sport teaches you more not selfishness, but how to deal with problems by yourself, how to overcome those obstacles that you may see by yourself. And then team sports make you work with other people, and those interpersonal skills are something that you need all your life.
Of course.
And getting through obstacles with your teammates, with other people, are just good for relationships in general. What do you guys think? Any other points about just what made you guys love it and be like want to talk about it now and write about it and discuss it all the time?
That's well said. I definitely think those moments do just resonate with you. You talked about the Giants in 2012, Giants in 2007, 08 with the Super Bowl against the 18-0 Patriots is definitely a big moment for me. Just those underdog stories and the thoughts that, okay, like you always have a chance. You always get a chance. And also what makes me gravitate towards sports is like individual brilliance. And you see a player who sort of transcends everybody. I'm talking about Lionel Messi, for example, the player for Barcelona soccer team. Just an unbelievable player. He does things week in, week out that people are just amazed by, and that no one else on earth or no one else who's ever been on earth can do.
And people love watching that. That's another thing that draws them. People love seeing excellence. People love seeing greatness happen, and it gives you a little hope that you can do it. It's like, oh, this guy can do it. Like Messi, like a short guy who wasn't supposed to be even that tall, just doing great things for an everyday guy, you know?
It's also a great inspiration for kids. I know, like, growing up in 1995, I was born, Ken Griffey Jr. and Derek Jeter, just guys who were just so insanely talented, but kept such a good air about them, were such good inspiration for kids that they allow kids to, like, you can be great at something, but you can also be humble about it and be a good person as well. I think that's important.
I agree. My favorite athletes were always the humble ones, not like the big time like talkers. Like Kobe always talked, but my favorite basketball player was always Derek Fisher, just because he was humble. He did his job. He did things the right way. Clutch player, which is why I was thrilled when he was hired as the coach of the Knicks.
Me too.
Mark Teixeira is my favorite baseball player. Just these guys who are no nonsense. This is what we have to do. Let's go achieve it. Save everything else for later.
Right, and that teaches that not everybody can be a superstar. There's a handful of superstars in the league, but it's about being a good teammate. It's about doing your job and being a good guy. Like we all know Kobe. Some people call it jerk, selfish, whatever. But Kobe has gone on the record many times saying Derek Fisher was his favorite teammate. You know, he needed, like, without him, you know, those rings don't happen.
Kept him in check too.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's about that. It's about knowing your role. And that's the other thing about sports. It teaches you a lot about yourself, which is really important because I know, like, in school or just in general life, you have a hard time. People have a hard time finding themselves, knowing what they're about. Once you start running or doing all these different activities, and when push comes to shove, you find out who you really are. And I think that's really important because it teaches you what you can do, what you can't do, and it maximizes your potential because that's how you'll find out what you need to do to be successful. So I think that's a great discussion on just sports in general. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about, like Lionel Messi, the greatest athletes of all time and just great moments in history. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, we just talked about sports in general, how we can apply it to our lives. Let's talk some sports history. The first question comes to mind, who's the greatest player of all time? That's been like a bar conversation since the beginning of history. Who's the best at this all time? So let's talk. My favorite sport is about basketball, so let's start with that. Probably the only, other than Wayne Gretzky in hockey, the only undeniable GOAT, greatest of all time in a sport, probably Michael Jordan. What do you guys think? Anything that made him stand out, or any other player in the history of basketball?
Just what I love about Michael Jordan is he can be a bit of a jerk. He has that jerky side to him, but he's quiet about it. And it was always about hard work and determination with Michael Jordan. No one wanted to win and be the best of all time like Jordan. Some people want to be great, want to be good, want to just be good enough to be a professional athlete and make a lot of money. Michael Jordan just wanted to be the greatest of all time, and that mentality, like, that's what brought him there. That's what I love about Jordan.
I totally agree, and I think his drive for success was just unrivaled. And as a Knicks fan, he killed us in the 90s. I mean, no one terrorized the New York Knicks more than Michael Jordan, except for maybe Reggie Miller.
Right, maybe.
But Jordan was an amazing player. When I think about the greatest of all time, I don't look at achievements or statistics. I look at, do you change the game?
Right.
Do you change the landscape of the sport that you're playing in? And I think Jordan did that. I think Jordan really transformed basketball into what it is today. And it is a superstar league predominantly. Back in the day, it was a lot about teamwork, but but Jordan's individual brilliance has led the way for other individual greats like Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, players like that.
That's a great point.
Are the centerpiece of their franchises and can carry a franchise to a title, albeit with some help. Scottie Pippen, Dwayne Wade, Russell Westbrook, etc. But Jordan changed the game, and I think that there are a handful of players in the NBA. Wilt Chamberlain comes to mind, maybe Magic Johnson, that really also changed the game.
Yeah, and no, that's a great point. It's not just stats. It's not just the objective things. It's about impact on and off the court. Rule changes, how people talk about you. That's what impact. That's very, very big in considering conversation like that, and just overall judging a player against another. What do you guys think about other sports? I know you guys were talking about football.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have kind of a different opinion. I know the classic is, Joe Montana, someone from those 49ers teams, but I love Tom Brady. And I'm a Giants fan, so I have no reason to hate Brady. We beat him twice in the Super Bowl. Tom Brady has won just as many Super Bowls as Joe Montana, has more passing yards, albeit it's more of a passing league now. I love Brady because he's the same thing as Michael Jordan to me. They're like the same way like that because Brady wants to be the best. No one wants to win on that football field more than Tom Brady. No one. And Brady, he has fun with it too. You can tell he has fun. But when it comes time to business, fourth quarter, 2 minutes left, need 3 points, 7 points on the board. You know what? Brady's going to do it. He's going to get serious and focused, and he brings his teammates together. People might think he's a jerk, from other teams, but his teammates love him more than anyone. And
you know what about that comparison? Those guys, in slightly different situations, played with revenge, like a revenge mentality. Brady being picked in the 6th round, Michael not picked first overall, or not making varsity as a sophomore.
Chip on the shoulder.
Right. Well, Michael was like psychotic about all those things. Was just found just anything to get an edge. But yeah, Brady, like right now with the whole Deflategate, he finds these small things to give him motivation, and that attitude. That's what makes you a great. That's what makes you historic. What do you think?
I totally agree. When you look at football, it's such an arbitrary sport to call someone the GOAT because there are so many different positions.
Yeah.
But I think it's undeniable that the quarterback is the most important position in professional sports right now.
Sure.
So if you're going to look at the NFL, you need to look at a quarterback as the best overall player. And in my opinion, it is Joe Montana because he also changed the game. And the dynasties that he had in San Francisco were fantastic. And he wasn't the most physically gifted player either. So he did play with a chip on his shoulder because a lot of people said, you can't do it. And here he is leading these drives down the field, winning these Super Bowls. I think his competitive edge is often underrated, but I think he's the first great quarterback in the NFL to experience that kind of success.
Yeah, no, I agree. And this is why sports gets very interesting because you can talk about, Joe Montana had Jerry Rice, the greatest receiver of all time. Oh, Tom Brady had, Randy Moss for a certain amount of time, had Vinatieri making those field goals at the end, had a pretty solid defense for a while, had Bill Belichick, probably the greatest coach maybe of all time
Are you trying to say Brady's not the best?
I don't know. As far as quarterbacks, definitely those two. My boy Peyton Manning is the greatest regular season quarterback of all time, but just has not had as much success as those guys in the Super Bowl and in the playoffs overall. And I'll admit it. For the quarterbacks, I think it's those two. I think Favre and Elway deserve to be in that conversation a little bit at the top. What about like baseball? Baseball's different than the other two because baseball's history is so much bigger, so much greater, and just more extensive. What do you guys think?
There's only one player who you can really argue is the best all time, and it's Babe Ruth. Has to be Babe Ruth. There's no one else. There really isn't. I mean, if I'm saying my argument is that you have to change the game, Babe Ruth did change the game.
Yeah,
when he was traded to the Yankees and he became this slugger that everyone idolized.
After being a
pitcher, great Bambino. After being a pitcher, exactly. He's one of the best hitters of all time. And in a sport that is often followed for its hitting and the allure of the home run, Ruth started that trend. And Ruth is one of, if not the most dominant offensive players ever. And I think his impact on the game, as well as his statistical output, makes him the greatest all time.
I have to agree with you, Skylar. I think Babe Ruth is also the greatest of all time. And it's because baseball, you have to define it by dominance. 1900, early 1900s baseball is way different than modern baseball today. Babe Ruth's presence over every other player in the league at the time, there was no comparison. Babe Ruth was by far the greatest player, completely changed the game. Today, there's not as much dominance. Sure, there are great players like Miguel Cabrera, Mike Trout, but they're right up there with each other. Babe Ruth did it better than anyone else could at the time he was playing.
Right, and again, there's a little side notes. For example, Babe Ruth played with Lou Gehrig. You didn't want to go 3 and 4 in that lineup. There are a lot of things going on. Right, exactly. or, you know, a lot of people argue Willie Mays, the greatest complete player of all time, much better fielder, much better base runner than Babe Ruth was. A lot of people, and I think the same thing, say Ted Williams as the greatest overall hitter, hit 406 in 1941. No one's come, some people have come close, but nobody's hit 400 since. I think personally, Barry Bonds has the greatest statistics of all time. Obviously, a huge asterisk with the PDs, and that's fine, but just statistically, and he's someone who I think should be in the Hall of Fame, but that's for another point.
Another story.
Statistically, I think his numbers are the greatest, most home runs. He changed the game as well. He got like so many walks. You know, people didn't want to pitch to him, and he still had those incredible numbers. You know, huge on base percentage, hit for average, all this stuff. And then, you know, it's not fair to compare hitters to pitchers. Like you were saying in football, there's a lot of different positions. You can't, because pitchers don't play every day. So there's, you know, your topics of conversation for pitchers change. There's also like Mariano Rivera, who didn't pitch the same amount of innings just because it was a closer, but just as dominant. So there's a lot of asterisks that come with each conversation, and I think that's why it's so interesting. As far as other sports, Wayne Gretzky is someone who, personally, I'm not the biggest hockey fan, so I don't get to talk about hockey as much because I just don't know. But he's farther ahead of like number 2 by so much. If he didn't score any goals, he'd still be the number 1 points leader of all time because he scored that many assists. So it's just incredible how dominant he was. But for as much as the other 3 sports, there's a lot of guys historically who are relevant, who are important, and who changed the game.
Absolutely, I agree.
You guys agree? Great. So that's, again, an awesome conversation. I think that wraps up our show. We'll see you next week. If in the meantime, if you're interested in joining LTV, please like us on Facebook or email us at ltv@tcnj.edu for Lions Television. I got Skylar Darel over here, Matt AJ on my other side. I'm Otto Gomez. Have a good one, folks.
He's all right. Kovac's at what, 2 here?